Mention Nisemonogatari and chances are your first thought is fanservice, the toothbrush scene, or of course, Platinum Disco. Nise has developed a reputation among some as the least interesting, most fanservice-y, and even worst entry in the franchise, claiming there just isn't any substance compared to Bake. But that's not true. Sure, Nise ramped up the already sky-high levels of fanservice in Bake to even greater heights, but none of it is without reason. If there's less substance, it's merely because the series only has 2 arcs, down from Bake's 5. Even then, Nise's 2 arcs are more connected. Themes of justice, fakes, and sexuality course throughout, lending the series plenty of intrigue to stand on. Nise may be a very different series to its predecessor, but it's certainly no less interesting to sort through. With that, today let's take a look at what makes Nisemonogatari a worthy entry to this massively popular franchise. With Tomoyuki Itamura replacing Tatsuya Oishi in the director's chair, the difference in style between Nise and Bakemonogatari is evident from the start. Gone is Oishi's more dynamic visual flair, seen in the live-action flashback during Senjugahara's arc and the bombastic elements of Araragi's fight with Kanbaru. Instead, Itamura offers a style less constantly in your face, making it all the more striking when it is. Of course, it still retains the same trademark Monogatari look, just with a few tweaks to make it work. This style allows the series to breathe a bit more, a perfect fit for Nise's much slower pace. With only 2 arcs spread over its 11-episode run, there's far more downtime to work through. Oishi's surreal, avant-garde work in Bake may have been more consistently brilliant, but Itamura's direction still showed flashes of greatness which helped inform the characters and story tremendously. For example, the use of color is particularly striking, like the solid filters during Araragi's imprisonment with Senjugahara, which seem to reflect the emotion of the scene. Later, that same effect is used to not so subtly turn up the intensity of the moment. Speaking of which, that might be where the direction shines the brightest. Monogatari is clearly a fanservice-heavy show, but where fans and haters disagree is the use of such gratuitous titillation. While there's more than enough to go around in other iterations of the franchise, general consensus seems to agree Nise takes it to a much higher, potentially damning level. Saying you don't like it or it makes you uncomfortable is one thing, but to insinuate it has no value outside of some twisted fat material is where you lose me. It's a topic others have covered many times before me, but the series knows how to use fanservice to its advantage. Where most fanservice works to the detriment of characters, often coming in at random times, pulling a 180 on their previously established personality, and degrading them to little more than a sex object through the male gaze of the camera, Monogatari's fanservice builds its characters, matching what we'd expect from their personas in those situations and offering insight into their psyche. It's these shots that reveal so much about the character dynamics, more so than anything they say ever could. Let's go through some examples. Hopelessly in love with Araragi, Nadeko attempts to entice him with tempting poses and revealing clothes, even trying to lure him into a very hands-on game of Twister. The camera fittingly juxtaposes her blatantly seductive looks with Araragi's total cluelessness. Where most fanservice follows the hormone-driven male lead's perspective, here it's Nadeko herself that's doing so. She tries to use her sexuality to charm Araragi, though he remains completely oblivious. Kanbaru, meanwhile, employs it in a much different light, teasing him and trying to make him as uncomfortable as possible. Like Nadeko, she's in control here, but the fanservice is used to a much different effect that's more of what we'd expect from Kanbaru and her relationship with Araragi. Hanekawa's one brief scene is brimming with these shots because that's how Araragi sees her. The fanservice is a direct result of the sexual tension between the two characters. Araragi's toying with Hachikuji, for example, is never sexualized, even though he's bordering on sexual harassment. Despite some highly leading visuals, we never get anything like a panty shot. Why? Because it isn't supposed to be sexual. In one of the series' more infamous scenes and our first real introduction to the character, Shinobu spends the entire time stark naked, yet you hardly notice because nobody makes a big deal out of it. She doesn't care, Araragi doesn't care, the camera doesn't care, therefore, you shouldn't care. Even early scenes between Araragi and his sisters chooses to ignore potentially racy shots, as nothing about the situation calls for it. Now, I bet I know what you're thinking. Is this guy seriously going to try to defend the toothbrush scene? Well, sort of. I have to say the camera work and cinematography in this scene is really remarkable. It creates such an erotic atmosphere and close, intimate connection that's enough to almost make you forget that the only thing happening here is Araragi brushing Karen's teeth. That's really the point, though. This shouldn't be a sexual situation, yet it is. Neither character is expecting to be this aroused, or aroused at all, from such a seemingly menial task to the point that once it starts, they completely lose themselves. It's a scene that works a million times better in context, and I say that from experience. Need further proof? Just ask my neighbors who can probably hear me through the walls recording this. Kaden wants Araragi to introduce her to Kanbaru, so she tries to throw him off guard by presenting herself in a sexier light, wearing Tsukihi's clothes and acting all girly, highly out of character. Araragi, meanwhile, doesn't want her to see how perverse her idol Kanbaru is, so he tries to throw her off by suggesting this toothbrush game. If she can withstand 5 minutes of it, she wins. We've already started with both characters off their game, but when things quickly heat up, they forget why they were doing this in the first place and totally get swept up in the moment, much like the viewer. That Nisemonogatari could make something that monotonous so intimately erotic is actually pretty impressive. Of course, the exquisite presentation doesn't change the fact that this is two siblings getting sexually aroused as one brushes the other's teeth, so if that's still too big of a hang-up for you, oh well. This isn't about arousing you, the viewer, no matter the detriment to the character. Here you see characters using their sexuality according to their persona, relationship, and motive. The result is a stronger use of eroticism to further a story, not impede it, than perhaps any other series I've seen. Contrary to what others might say, however, there's plenty more to this show than that. Like its predecessor, Nisemonogatari is a play on words, combining Nisemono, or imposter, and Monogatari, or story, making the English translation something like impostory. It should come as no surprise then that the theme of fakes drives the series. From the wicked conman Kaiki to Tsukihi's true identity, imposters are everywhere in Nisemonogatari, and in the first arc, it's false heroics which take the forefront. The Fire Sisters steadfastly strive to do what's right, to embody Seigi no Mikata, allies of justice. Kaden, more so than Tsukihi, yearns for it, latching onto her naive sense of right and wrong in an effort to do as much good as she can. Kaden wants so desperately to save people because, well, it's the right thing to do. It's an overly idealistic outlook, painting the world into neatly organized categories of good and bad, black and white. Their enemy in this arc is the laughably maniacal-looking Kaiki. It's no coincidence our introduction to him is unimaginably over the top with how much it tries to say, hey look, this guy's evil. A harrowing red hue covering the screen, dead, gnarled trees everywhere, a stream made out to look like a literal river of blood separating the two. Even the sun's been morphed into this huge, eerie mass. The scene would seem to say Kaiki is clearly pure evil and must be stopped. Later, we learn Kaden confronted him herself only to wind up poisoned. The room she meets him in is fittingly colored in black and white with distinct lines separating the two. Kaiki proceeds to call her out on her foolish behavior. After all, she's picking a fight with someone she knows nothing about other than he's done wrong. Kaden completely disregards the danger of the situation because, hey, someone's got to stop him. Her way of doing so is, unsurprisingly, by force, but Kaiki assures her such efforts would be fruitless. Where Kaden believes justice makes the world go round, Kaiki claims it's money. As Kaden's perspective closes in around her, the lines in the room grow much tighter, swirling into spirals, creating a heavy claustrophobic feeling, which culminates when he poisons her with the bee. Kaiki's symbolic of a much more cynical worldview to Kaden's. He's the antithesis to her ideas of justice. She's far too weak to defeat him, not physically, but in terms of her resolve. His Saturday morning cartoon villain vibe is exactly the type of black and white evil Kaden claims to defend against, but in reality, she's not capable. Araragi tells her you can't win battles purely off the basis of being right. Strength doesn't cater to justice. But Kaden snaps back saying lack of strength shouldn't keep you from pursuing what's right. She stubbornly proclaims that regardless of whether she wins the fight, it's not a loss as long as she doesn't lose her way. Araragi ironically tells her that will only cause those around her to suffer. You can see how the two mirror each other. Even in Nise, Araragi continues to illustrate that same self-destructive saving others before oneself mindset, and again it almost kills him when he picks a fight with a severely overmatched opponent. Twice. He even tries to take on Kaden's sickness himself to lessen her burden. He represents a different mold of hero. Both are equally fake. The Fire Sisters pretending to be righteous hands of justice even though that view is far too quixotic to work, and Araragi blindly sacrificing himself with no thought to how that may affect those he's trying to save, or whether it'll really solve the problem. In their final confrontation, after Kaden kills him at least 20 times, Araragi finally calls out the flaw in her ideology. That saving people for the sake of saving people is no reason. As long as she continues to do so, she'll never be the hero she claims to be.
お前たちは正義でもなければ正義の味方でもない。正義の味方ごっこで戯れるただのガキだ。偽物だ。お前たちが敵視するのはいつだって悪人ではなく悪役だ。
As Araragi points out, however, being fake isn't necessarily wrong. As long as they can accept that, that's in effect the same as the real thing. Sugihara eventually takes care of Kaiki by actually addressing the problem, something Araragi should learn from. She lets go of all the resentment she harbored towards him for the damage he caused to her and her family, even letting him walk away unharmed, stating now she can finally move forward. It's a pivotal moment demonstrating how Araragi's method only provides a temporary solution to the problem, but the only way to really solve it is to address the root of the issue. It's ironic, of course, that the next time we see him is chilling at a donut shop, a reminder of just how fictional Kaden's pure evil idea of him is. Nise's second arc, Tsukiji Phoenix, continues to implement imposters as its central theme. Every episode is filled with so much symbolism it might take a video for each to cover it all, but one of my favorite examples came in this arc, while Tsukiji is recovering unconscious from Ononoki's attack. The way her bed is framed elicits the visual of a bird trapped in its cage, fitting for Tsukiji's Phoenix oddity, as well as the classic image of a sleeping princess locked away in a tower. The rose in the background only furthers this. Araragi then takes on the role of her prince, waking her up from her nightmare with a kiss, like all those fairy tales. Tsukiji's reaction is understandably dumbfounded, but it's a crucial moment to the climax of this arc. To this point, Yozuru shockingly revealed Tsukiji is not really his sister, but rather a phoenix endlessly reincarnating as a human child after dying. Araragi's mother is more so the true victim then, as Tsukiji is the oddity herself, assuming the identity of his sister. This moment, unlike previous parts, isn't meant to be sexual, but rather it confirms to Araragi that even if she's a fake, Tsukiji is the real thing, regardless of whatever affliction befalls her. Tsukiji is the final imposter, but while she may not be a real human, there's nothing fake about her relationship with Araragi. She is his sister, and that's the only reality that matters, finally giving him the resolve to save her. Nisemonogatari seems to say everybody is faking something. We lie to ourselves to shield us from pain, pretend to be something we're not, and keep secrets that could change others' perception of us. But through all that deceit and falsehood, people continue moving forward because it's the only way to go, even if it means we have to keep up the charade, as long as there's something real to hold on to. By the end, none of the characters seem to have changed much, all still holding on to their lies, much like at the end of Bake. The Fire Sisters still latch on to their sense of justice, but no matter how foolhardy or sure to get them into more trouble it may be, their resolve, much like Araragi's, is still admirable. And while Tsukiji is truthfully an imposter, there's no doubt she's really his sister. They may be fakes, but that makes them closer to the real thing than anything. I've spent a lot of time in this video highlighting how Nise deviated from Bake, but while there's certainly plenty of difference to parse through, that's not being completely honest. Truth be told, Nise is actually quite similar in most regards. Of course, the characters in the world haven't changed and the openings are still as wonderful as ever, but there's more to it than that. Nisemonogatari feels the same. The two series are different enough that if you watch one expecting the other, you'll leave disappointed. However, if more Monogatari is what you want, Nise is the perfect fix. It filled me with a remarkable sense of nostalgic delight, how overjoyed I was to see these characters with their outrageous and never-ending stream of dialogue. It reminded me why I fell in love with this series in the first place, which is really the best you can ask for out of a sequel. I'm actually glad I waited months to resume the series, because if I hadn't, I don't think I would have appreciated that enough. This is still only the beginning of this adventure. I said in my Bake video I couldn't wait to see where Niseo Isen and the minds at Studio Shaft would continue to take this story, both past and future, and leaving Nise, I can happily say the same, only now with even more characters to look forward to. I may be a full 26 episodes into this world, but with some 50 plus to go, there's still so much I don't know. However, there is one thing I'm quite sure of. If Nisemonogatari is the worst this franchise has to offer, this is gonna be one hell of a ride.
重ねたら忘れちゃった夢の続きまた私を待って